Hey, again, thanks for stopping by for our Rockets season preview. 10 points on the upcoming season. I'm Matt Weiner. Greg Anthony's right there. This is Brian Shaw. We'll hear from these guys throughout the show. The 2019-2020 version of the Rockets is all about a match made in Houston. To skeptics, the pairing of the Beard and Russ may feel more like fantasy basketball than a fantasy come true. But the Rockets have loaded up in the backcourt with two of the last three league MVPs who've known each other since they were kids and are both still just 30 years of age. Here's Russell Westbrook on some of the skepticism about the pairing.
Yeah, I think it's very, very interesting to me. I think that there are other duos around the league that got together.
Yeah.
Kawhi and Paul, LeBron and Anthony, Kevin and Kyrie. But as soon as me and James got together, it was quickly.
Yeah, the narrative was quick.
Negative. And to me, I think it's very, very interesting. But I do think it's I'm always looking at it as a blessing. And it's great because I always look at it as if there's constantly things said about you in the media negatively. I feel like it's a positive. I don't know how I
use it as fuel. Yeah,
it's just a positive because I think it's so great because myself or James must be doing something very, very great or unheard of to make you think that we cannot play together.
It's a great way to look at it. Yeah,
and I think it's amazing because we're so comfortable with each other and how we play the game and what I'm able to bring to the game, what he's able to bring to the game, and it's something that we don't even worry about because we know what we're capable of doing.
Westbrook there with our Allie LaForce. So, first impressions. How well will this partnership work?
I think it'll work very well. First of all, they have trust. They go back from, junior high school, middle school, high school. They played together in OKC before. And that familiarity that they have, that trust that they have with one another, especially when the other one is off the ball, is something that they haven't had for a while. And I think that they'll rely on that. Whenever you put two MVPs together, guys that are willing to do whatever it takes to make their team better, they have that as well. And the fact that Russell Westbrook accumulates triple-double after triple-double, as well as Harden, who can do the same thing. They're both willing passers. They both score at a high level. I think it's going to be a great tandem, and the league's going to have to watch out.
No doubt about it. And, people are wondering whether or not it works. I think it's going to work brilliantly from this standpoint also. Russell provides them what they lacked the season ago. His athleticism, his ability to make plays without the basketball. That's going to be critical for their overall success. They would lose a lot of possession battles last year because they just didn't have enough athleticism. When you factor in his ability to defensive rebound and create opportunities in the open floor, that's where he differs from, say, Chris Paul. And the other thing, his game is more complementary to James's when James has the ball, because he can catch lobs. He can go and attack the offensive glass. When he gets those swing passes off of double teams, he can attack and also make the plays. And as great a player as Chris Paul is, his level of athleticism, I keep harping on that, but it's going to be critical to their success. And then you factor in that the top of the West, while it's going to be very deep, you don't have an all-time team right now like you did a year ago with Golden State the last few years. So now I think it actually sets up better for Houston potentially if Mike D'Antoni can figure out the balance with those two in terms of maybe staggering minutes or however he tends to utilize that rotation. But I think that duo could be extremely potent in that Western Conference.
There's maybe no other combination of endurance and athleticism, explosiveness like Russell Westbrook in the league. You mentioned the athleticism. What else is he in particular bringing to this roster?
Well, they weren't particularly a good defensive rebounding team, and that's something that he does extremely well, to Greg's point. And so that, as well as his length and athleticism, his versatility defensively. Houston is a team that switches 1 through 5 defensively, and so where Chris Paul may have gotten taken advantage of in the post, they won't be able to do that as easily with Russell Westbrook. And in his slashing ability, and one thing that people sleep on with him, he's a great offensive rebounder. And the Houston Rockets are one team, and I think that they teach rebounding from the corners when three-point shots go up. P.J. Tucker, as well as Russell Westbrook, are underrated offensive rebounders because they play the small forward and the guard position, and that's something that's going to allow them to have second opportunities and be able to pick up because they're switching anyway.
You know, one of the things that people pointed to immediately in terms of differences between the Russ and the Rockets is obviously three-point shooting. The Rockets, 3 years in a row now, have set league records for threes made in a season. But in Russ, they're bringing in, statistically, the worst volume three-point shooter in NBA history. What does that mean to their offensive approach?
Well, first and foremost, what it has to be is Westbrook's shot quality has to improve. I really felt like because of the pressure in OKC and the lack of shooting, he took a lot of ill-advised, difficult shots that I think when you play with more talent, you don't have to take as many poor shots.
Right.
And I think his overall shot quality has got to improve. And I think he's even talked about it. You know, a lot of those threes he would take weren't space rhythm threes. They were off the dribble. They were under duress. I think his shot quality improvement improves his efficiency. And I think also, if I'm Mike D'Antoni, I don't want to have him become just a three-point shooter. I want him to be dynamic. To Brian's point, allow him to dominate the game inside the three-point line, and James can dominate it outside the three-point line. That way they complement each other a little bit more, and I think he becomes a much more impactful player because he's more efficient.
And one thing will be different as well, the shooting that he has now with this Houston Rockets team, he didn't have last year in the OKC.
They've not been a good three-point shooting team for years.
Exactly. Right? And so what it's going to allow when he does get in pick and roll play or he is attacking in transition and the defense has to be aware and stay closer to the perimeter shooters that they have on the Rockets team, now he's going to be able to get in the lane and finish inside. And then when they do come in to collapse on him, he has those shooters now that he has confidence to be able to hit that are going to knock down those open looks.
You know, they've already talked about staggering their minutes a little bit during the regular season. We saw that with Chris Paul as well. And there's also maybe a kind of a fire and ice approach in terms of pace and play. The Rockets have not been a very fast-paced team, 26th in the league last season in pace of play after being all the way up to third 2 seasons prior. Russ can push the basketball, obviously, and maybe change that equation.
I think he does. And I think if you go back to that first year with Chris Paul, that was the year where they were 13th in pace. I think that's about where they want to be. If they're middle of the pack in terms of pace because of how many times Russ and Russell, I should say, and James are going to get to the free throw line, I think they're going to be fine. I don't think they want to become the fastest team in the league. But if they get to the middle of the pack in terms of pace, with that talent, they're going to be potent. They're going to be very difficult to deal with from a defensive standpoint.
And imagine, in terms of Russell Westbrook pushing the ball and putting that pressure on the defense, now there's no way that, you have to pick your poison in terms of what you want to do. And so him putting that pressure on when Harden's breaking you down in the half court and the fact that their pace will improve because of Westbrook, that's going to mean more offensive opportunities for them on that end. And as potent as they are offensively, just imagine them having more opportunities now to score on you. It's going to be tough to beat.
Well, time will tell whether this is a better basketball team than the Chris Paul, James Harden version of the Rockets. But one thing has definitely changed, and you alluded to it, and that's the Western Conference. Because of some of the departures, the injuries, the Warriors are a very different team. It's a lot more wide open than it's been. How much more, doable is the path to a Western Conference championship for this team?
Well, I think it's more doable in terms of, I think everybody looked at the Golden State team and said, wow, they're going to be tough to beat when it gets down to it. And now they're different. There's no KD. Klay Thompson's, we don't know when he's going to come back. Same thing with the Clippers with Paul George. And so I think the pressure, there's less pressure on them. I think they can feel a little bit more comfortable in their chances because their team is still pretty much intact. And they've added Russell Westbrook. So. But the middle of the pack of the West, the top 8, teams are going to cannibalize each other night in and night out. And so I don't think the win totals for all the teams will be much different than they were a year ago. Because it has to feel pretty good about the team that they're bringing back with the addition of Westbrook.
And I would go a step further with that. I think it's going to come down when we get to postseason matchups because of that. Because before with Houston, there was only one team that they worried about. Now you're going to have 5, 6, 7 teams that could beat you in a 7-game series. I mean, the depth is there and the quality of the depth and the fact that when Golden State now, even though they're going to still be really good, they're not going to be overly dominant. That gives everybody else more confidence. And so now when I'm playing you in that second round, I'm saying, man, if we get by this one, we could get to the finals. Like your mindset, it really does change. And so while they don't have to deal with that 800-pound gorilla, in a lot of ways, it could be more difficult because now you might, in the first round, face a team that could potentially knock you out, and it wouldn't be an upset just because of the depth of that conference.
We'll get into the rest of the roster in the next segment, but bottom line this for me, the addition of Russell Westbrook, swapping out Chris Paul for Westbrook, does it make them a more viable Western Conference championship contender than they were a year ago?
Yes, I think it absolutely does.
And I have to agree with that.
All right, we'll nail these guys down on win totals a little later on. We continue on with our team preview of the Rockets. Lots more to get to. We've gotten into the one major change, but much of the good about Houston is the same. We'll explain when we come back. Heated up Madison Square Garden on a January night with 61, a Rockets team record, and tied with Kobe Bryant for the most by a visiting player at MSG ever. But Harden and Russ will need plenty of help, of course, throughout the season. They retained much of their depth, the Rockets did, while addressing the roster defensively with additions like Thabo Sefolosha and Tyson Chandler. So the question for the two of you is, who is the most important non-MVP on this roster moving forward?
Well, I have a number of guys, and it's their bigs at the 5 spot. Can Tyson Chandler, can Nene, and can Capella stay healthy? And I think if they can do that, the sky is the limit for this team. But as much as they're going to be running, as pace is going to pick up, they've added Ben McLemore, who's extremely athletic. They can play that 2-3 spot. That can also shoot the ball from the outside. But for me, it's can their bigs stay healthy throughout the season?
I think that's going to be critical for them. I think the biggest beneficiary, though, of having Westbrook come over is P.J. Tucker. I really feel like, from a defensive standpoint, again, as great a defender as he is, he's a guy that, based on your system, he can be exploited at times. I don't think that you can exploit them now the way that he at times would have struggles. And we talked about their lack of defensive rebounding. I think that's an area where, as good as he is, he could hurt you in the past with that roster that didn't have the athleticism. Now that they have it, I think it really helps his game overall, which in turn helps this Rocket team. But their depth, while we said they brought a lot of those guys back, they're going to need a different type of impact. So the guys like Sefolosha, they're going to have to get more defensive oriented the way they were 2 years ago.
Right.
When they had to, remember, they lose a lot of guys like Ariza
and Ba Mute left, and they got much worse.
And that's what the difference was from year to year. Now I think with their roster as presently constructed, they're able to kind of offset that, but adding Westbrook again helps everybody. His athleticism. He's going to eat up possessions for you with his ability to rebound a basketball. He's also a better defender than people maybe give him credit for. And I think if he's more disciplined on that end, I think this Rockets team is going to be a lot of fun to watch this year.
How about the expectations for Clint Capella, who was very productive last season when he was there? He had a thumb injury, took him out for part of the year, and then was kind of taken out of the Golden State series.
Well, that's the thing. The regular season shows you who you can be, but the postseason shows you who you are.
Right.
And they were able to game plan him and took away a lot of his ability. The bottom line for me, I didn't think he was tough enough in that series. I just felt like Golden State was able to kind of get him off his game and didn't allow him to have the impact on the interior. And so if you're a coaching staff in the front office, when you sit down with him, you've got to get him to understand, we need you to be more of a physical, impactful player than you were in the postseason. Forget the regular season. We're going to win enough games, but it's about what can you do for us in the postseason. He's got to get back to that level for this team. Ultimately, to Brian's point, he might be the most important guy because he's that third guy that has a chance to be an all-star caliber player who didn't play like it in the postseason. He's definitely going to have an impact.
Averaged about 16 and 12 last season. Austin Rivers is back for another go-around with the Rockets. What is his role now behind those two superstars and behind Eric Gordon, or part of that rotation generally?
Well, he just has to be solid in his minutes out there on the court. There can't be a drop-off when he comes in. But, they're going to be staggering Russell and James, and so he'll be playing with one or both of those guys when he's in the game. But, just knock down shots, play tough defensively, use his speed and his youth and his athleticism as well to mesh with this team and bring them together. And if he can do that, their bench unit will be pretty solid.
And the other guy that I think really benefits is Eric Gordon. Because remember last year he got pressed into having to play a little bit more lead guard at times, and the minutes got kind of heavy. Now he's going to always be out there with a force, either be Westbrook or Harden, and I think that's where he's really at his best as a complementary scorer. He's terrific at that. when he has to be the primary guy, the primary focus, I think it gets tougher because the defense can kind of focus. But you got to expect that Russ is going to play basically the whole season, should stay healthy. And if that's the case, I think Eric Gordon could have a monster season for this team.
Gordon could be a good complement not just to Russ or Westbrook, but occasionally I would imagine to both of them.
Yes.
I would assume you're going to see a lot of three-guard lineups from Mike D'Antoni.
Most definitely. And, you know, one of the most underrated aspects of Eric Gordon is his ability to put the ball on the floor and get to the basket. And, you know, people think of him as just a perimeter catch and shoot, spot up three-point shooter, but that was one of the strengths of his game, being able to put the ball on the floor. When defenses are closing out to him, he was able to attack their closeouts. And so, you know, for this team, you know, going back to Clint Capella, Golden State, you weren't the only one that thought that he wasn't tough enough. Obviously, Golden State felt that as well.
Yeah.
But I think what will open up for him is the fact that Russell is going to be putting so much pressure on them, pushing the ball down the floor. He's going to get out in transition and be finishing a lot. And if he can knock down his free throws when he does get fouled, when he's rolling to the basket, because everybody's going to be out on their shooters, that's going to do nothing but help this team.
I'm hearing a theme here that Russell Westbrook's presence is going to help a lot of guys.
Yeah, that's what great players tend to do. They tend to make everybody better.
MVPs sometimes have that impact on their teammates. More to the team that fights together, right? That's the theory, I guess. With the Houston Rockets training at the UFC Performance Institute in Las Vegas over the summer. Look at them work. Getting it in for the season. Now time to fight for a Western Conference championship. Here's James Harden with our Ali LaForce.
This team was able to really hold on to its core. He was the one big addition to the team. How much of an advantage is it to just plug in a piece instead of start from scratch or have a bunch of dramatic changes to the team?
Yeah, I mean, this is my 8th year here, and like the first 4 or 5 years was just basically like you just explained. Like it was everywhere.
Yeah.
We didn't really have a core, a defined core. We really didn't have, you know, 5, 6, 7 guys that were just coming in, you know, in the year after. So now we've had that with Eric and PJ and Clint. You know, so it felt great. You know, and then to add Russ, you know, another superstar to the team. I miss excitement. Not only just a player, but just like somebody you call your close friend to. It makes it that more exciting.
I remember after the Game 6 loss, you said, I know exactly what we need to do to be better. So you knew you needed rust. I mean, it was...
I didn't know we were going to get rust, but I knew we needed to get better.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, you look at the talent you know, from the Warriors and Toronto, who's in the finals, and, you know, even the other teams that are at the top tier of this league. You need to get better. You need talent. You need vets that not just can run around and shoot threes and dunk, but think the game of basketball. You know, I think we have that this year.
In your mind, do you think you should be considered right now the best backcourt in the league? Starting backcourt?
I mean, I don't even care about starting backcourt.
Yeah.
Like, we all know how great Russell is and myself. We just want to, you know, build that chemistry and that camaraderie and build that confidence in each individual one of our teammates to go out there and play the best that they can play in every single game.
What do you think about the narrative so far?
What narrative?
The media narrative about you two being together.
I don't know. I don't pay attention to it.
I guess what's interesting to me is it's like, can they coexist together? Not how will they be great together? Or
yeah, I don't pay attention to it. You know, because it was a narrative before when, you know, before me and Chris got together, and then we ended up being #1 team in the regular season. So the narrative is something that you guys have to do. You know, we're just going to go out there and figure it out. And it isn't always going to be perfect. You know, there's going to be a lot of great times, a couple bad times, but that's a part of basketball. I think that's every team goes through that throughout the course of a year.
I think that's the mentality of a veteran too, right?
Yeah, we don't really care about it. Like, we got to figure it out. Like, and it's not just about me and Russ.
Yeah.
It's about the entire team. How can we, how can Tyson fit in well? Austin is back for a full year. It's just a lot of individual pieces that we have to figure it out, and then collectively.
Have you guys joked with each other about both being so ball dominant?
No, not one time we talked about that.
Good.
Because that's something we had to do. Like, he had to do that in Oklahoma City. I had to do that. Now it's just like, all right, let's go out there and hoop.
And actually just play basketball. Yeah. What have you told him about D'Antoni's system?
He kind of knows from outside looking in, but he's never had a coach that allows him to give him that confidence to go out there and just be who he is. Obviously, Russ is going to do what he does regardless,
right?
Because he's that great of a player. But just a coach give you that confidence to being able to, be with yourself and shoot threes and go dunk on somebody and just be Russ. Like that's the confidence that coach gives me, and he give and not just the top players. He gives the 15 player that same confidence, and that's why I think everybody loves him.
When we come back, the guys will put a number on it. How many wins will this new iteration of the Rockets earn in Houston?
It's going to be scary. That's all I can tell you. It's going to be scary. Not for us.
Probably something to that if you're an opposing guard and heading into Houston. That's not a super fun matchup, right? But here's one of the questions about the Rockets in this pairing, because last I checked, the NBA is still using one basketball per game. That hasn't changed in the offseason. And as you can see, between them, Russ and James Harden have not only the top 2 single-season usage rates in league history, meaning how often they handle the ball, but 3 of the top 4. It's one of the questions to be worked out for the Rockets this season. All right, time to figure out how many wins they're going to rack up this version. They won 53 last year. We're going to set the win bar at 54.5. Will the Rockets wind up with more or fewer?
That's a tough call. I think they have a better chance of winning a title this year. Not sure they win more than 54, though. And that's not based on who they are. It's based on who they will be playing. The Western Conference is going to be really loaded, and I just think it's going to be a dogfight every night.
So you're saying?
I'm going to go under. I'm going to say 54.
All right.
And I guess I'm under as well. I'm right at 54. I know they won 53 last year. The rest of the pack has gotten better. The departures with Trevor Ariza, Bamute, Bedzelic, who was their defensive coach a year ago that they brought back, Carmelo Anthony, they got off to a slow start last year. They're going to be much better this year from the start.
Is this a championship team?
They are.
Yes.
All right, we'll find out. It's going to be fun. For Greg and Brian, I'm Matt. We'll